Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 636. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, Tony Timbol of Agile Ready joins the Software Process and Measurement Cast. Tony and I have worked together in the past, so we had a bit of fun poking at each other as we talked about user stories, Tony's new product, Agile Ready, and entrepreneurship. Tony delivers a number of great tips, some of which I've already put to use. Tony is an Agile coach, trainer, and consultant with a 35-year history in technology and software development. Currently serving as an Enterprise Agile Coach for a large American healthcare insurance provider, Tony teaches and coaches Agile best practice principles, the SAFe framework, specializing in the product owner role, and Agile requirements authoring processes. Other interests include cooking, writing novels, binge-watching science fiction, no matter how bad. Early in 2018, Tony conceptualized the Agile Ready platform and began experimentation and preliminary design discussions with trusted friends and colleagues. This eventually led to a commitment to develop and launch Agile Ready in early 2021. Are you Agile ready to talk user stories? It's time for the interview. Tony Timbol, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be here.
Just to be all transparent, Tony and I have history. Let's just put it that way. Just a little history. So Tony and I have worked together in the past. We have spent many an evening in hotels during business meetings, chatting. I think I taught him how to drink lambic beer.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. Do you remember the Proper Pig in
the Flying Pig?
Flying Pig, yes.
Nice restaurant. Malvern, PA.
I miss that cheesy pig sandwich. Oh well.
Yeah. I still got some cholesterol reminders in my heart.
Yeah, I'm beyond cholesterol reducing medicine for the rest of my life due to that. Tony, today
Yes, sir.
let's talk about at least two things.
Sure.
Let's talk about your new product and Agile Ready. But before we dive in on Agile Ready, let's talk a little bit about the reason that things like stories, user stories, which, I guess some people probably don't even like the word, but user stories, why are they important and why are they useful to a software team?
Sure. So user stories, when well written, help an Agile team understand the context of what it is that they have to develop before they start thinking about how to actually develop the code. In many ways, user stories are conversation prompts, and conversation is important to this. But user stories alone are in itself not enough. They live in a rich and deep information context that the team, with the help of the product owner, can unpack quickly what the business wants. And that unpacking process requires a lot of conversations and a lot of communication, which the faster that goes, the faster the how can emerge in a team's mind so that quality coding can start. And user stories are really different from traditional business requirements or programming specifications. They are really all about solution intent, not the technical solution of the code, which is separate.
Yeah, but we all love the handwritten documents that we used to get with all of the specifications. And I was digging around in my attic and I found a requirements document. And here's one, response time environment number 349. It's even numbered. And it has all of the assignment scopes and the production rates and all of the variables named. Why don't we expect that to come over the wall to us from the business? I mean, shouldn't they know exactly what we're supposed to make and throw it over the wall to us? That would be well written.
Yeah, that would be. But the flaw in that thinking about business requirements is that no matter how much you write in a document, whether it's a 5-page business requirement document or a 500-page business requirement document or programming specifications. Ultimately, there's a lot of context that is not available to be written. You can't write everything down in that document that a team needs to actually develop high quality code in real time. There's interpretive gaps between what has been written and what is meant, right? So you have the old adage, hey, I told you what I wanted, but that's not what I meant. And so even in that, conversations have to be curated and improved. And it's really about the idea that well-written user stories can help clear the fog of uncertainty by improving the communication of knowledge and the transfer of knowledge and the confirmation of the transfer of knowledge. I've had situations where teams have come to me and says, look, we have great backlog refinement sessions. We go ahead and have everybody in the room and the product owners talk about the stories. And then we ask the developers, do you understand the stories? And they go, yes. Okay. Then they point to stories and they go, okay, 5 points. And then then they proceed, they schedule for the sprint. And then they're in the middle of the sprint and they're asking a ton of stories, a ton of questions about the stories that you should have asked beforehand. So we've been working with product owners to say, look, you need to practice getting confirmation of their knowledge transfer, not just that they sat in a room with you and nodded their head, or these days a virtual room. And so that's important, that product owners are not just responsible for creating knowledge, but also for ensuring that that's transferred and the confirmation is received.
I've always been somewhat flabbergasted that people have these refinement sessions, or heck, even sprint planning, and the amount of rich knowledge that gets generated through conversation, to use that term. And you don't see another human being lift their pencil up and take a note. It's like, I'm pretty sure you're not going to remember that. I mean, what is it that precludes people from actually making sure or getting that confirmation that you've cut through the fog of uncertainty, or that they find out whether or not they've transferred the knowledge correctly?
So fear on both sides. Fear that the product owner has written a lousy story and he really doesn't know what he's doing, and fear that the developer is going to show their ignorance, both either of the business or of the technology they're working with. And so you've got to sort of make backlog refinement a safe space, but you also have to challenge individuals to share their knowledge of what they know and to say, look, it's okay if you don't know. This is the time to say, I don't know, I need help. So one of the techniques we've been coaching recently has been, okay, when you have a story that you're talking about and you product owner have done your 5-minute overview of the story, and a developer says, yes, I understand the story, then we say, okay, great. Now, developer, open up a notepad, go to the whiteboard. Obviously, we're online virtual these COVID days. And I want you to write down the 5 tasks that you're going to do in the 4 days that you think this story is going to take, and just write down an outline of how you think you're going to do this story. The technical lead or other senior developers are around. You don't have to worry about updating any Jira or Rally. This is simply a knowledge confirmation for you to publicly declare, to basically task in community so that the community can support you and help you. And yes, you're putting people on the spot, but that way you start to see whether there's gaps. And if they don't know, they'll say, I don't know the API that I'm supposed to use. Oh, okay. So then I'm going to need 4 hours to learn that API. No problem. Joe has done that before. He can help you with that. That's not a problem. So that community tasking is a way in which to then get that confirmation of the knowledge transfer, not just the knowledge declarative statements.
That, sir, that was worth the price of admission, I think. That idea of tasking in community, or tasking in community as a form of confirmation, that piece of advice, I think, is pretty fundamental and extraordinarily useful to anybody who's actually in the business. Tony, when this stuff goes wrong, it can go terribly wrong. What's a good example of a user story environment that has gone wrong? And obviously, you're going to change all the names and everything to protect the guilty. What's a good example of one of these things when it goes wrong?
So you have some teams that have really deep knowledge and expertise about what they want to do and the technology and the business domain that they have. And so they go and they write a user story that is very well written, addresses a lot of the situations very technically, and it becomes a program specification, not a user story, and then it's huge. And so and then you combine that with lack of developer knowledge confirmation, and then you have these user stories that are accepted into a sprint that there's no way they could ever get done into the sprint. And so we've had situations where you've had one story continued for 5 sprints. And so, yeah, exactly. Hold your heart. And so that's when it goes wrong, is when the thing is so large that they fail the basic understanding of that there's boundary limits. And this is a concept that I coach is called constraining boundaries. And what that means is that even before you think about pointing, just have these 2 basic principle keys in hand when you're authoring user stories. No user story should take longer than a week, and no feature that has a series of stories associated with it should take longer than 2 sprints to complete. And once you have those constraining boundaries, what that does is that forces the team to think about the size of the work. And those constraints force the team into thinking about, okay, because they have an intuitive sense of how big things are when they work with the material. So these constraints, they force teams to reduce the user story size in their authoring and scheduling process. And in a sense, these constraining boundaries are proxy for addressing capacity limits, because people have this mythological belief that there are no capacity limits, but there are. There are actual capacity limits. So when we say, okay, well, how do I know how many stories to write, whatever, I said, these 2 simple principles. User story should take no longer than a week. A feature that contains user story should take longer than 2 sprints. Fit your work within those boundaries. And all of a sudden, that becomes literally like a sifting filter or a colander by which the stories can then flow through. And then you got smaller stories, and then you improve lean flow.
We care about lean flow because?
The simple principle that small batches travel faster through any system than larger batches. And so I don't know where that came from. I'm sure it sure is. So I'm stealing that material.
It might be that physics stuff that you have in your background.
That's true. That's right. Bernoulli's equation of fluid flow, fluid dynamics. I did those equations, actually. They're differential equations. But no, you're right. Small batches. There's a exercise I do with teams. I give 2 teams each 30 Legos, separate pieces of Legos. And the first exercise is, I want you to assemble large pieces of toys, any configuration, but they have to each have 6 pieces each. And so they assemble the toys and they move the batch through, and it takes about 2.5 minutes for them to, an average size team, to flow through those 30 Legos. Then I tell them, do it again, but now your toy size is only 3 pieces. And usually they cut the time of processing those Lego pieces through the team system in half. Scientifically proven. Same people, same Legos, 30 Legos, but you just change the batch size, and all of a sudden the performance of that team increases tremendously. It's really amazing when they see that occur. Lean flow, small batches work through a system much faster.
That's a great exercise. Tony, how do we fix this? I mean, every team should have a individual BA that writes all of the stories. Heck, better yet, they should have a technical product owner, get rid of that other product owner, and they should write the user stories, and they could put the persona goal benefit kind of extra formula on their arm. They could tattoo it. My son-in-law could fix them up with that. We could get them a price. Maybe we could do an affiliate link in the show notes and really do it that way. So how do we fix this?
So let me address the thing about the issue about the BA. So the best agile teams are teams where everyone is a business analyst, where everybody in the team understands what the business wants, and everyone on the team should feel free to write user stories as needs emerges. That being said, different organizations, especially large ones working in complex marketplaces, often segment and have specialized domains of knowledge. So sometimes using specialists in knowledge areas can help product owners make a lot of sense. But the thing I mentioned earlier about how to fix it in a sense is I use, again, the constraining boundaries principle to help with the flow. But the other thing is stay simple. Make sure that every user story is written at least in a simple user story form. As a role, I want a goal, so I have a benefit at a minimum. That adherence to form at least gives you the starting point to have those more decent conversations. And there's something else I'll mention later about how using artificial intelligence and natural language processing when I talk about Agile Ready later, because there's that next level of understanding what it is that the business, its history of user stories and how that history can be mined.
Okay, I'll bite. Are there tools that could help with this? Is that what Agile Ready is?
So Agile Ready, at a nutshell, is a software as a service offering in the software product management space, but it's not a competitor to Jira or a competitor to Rally or version 1 or any of those tools. It's really around delivering a user story rating experience. It's focused around helping requirement authors of any skill level understand and improve their Agile user stories using an intelligent rating approach. And so we've put something together that we think can give product owners and businesses an ability to create user stories of any quality and understand the quality of those stories and how they fit together in their hierarchy of products and backlogs and iterations, such that in this first version of Agile Ready is really a very workmanlike tool. But our future versions are going to incorporate artificial intelligence and the natural language processing to give organizations a way to look back at their requirements authoring history in a way that then help them possibly work on a better authoring future.
So when I was looking at the tool, one of the things that I felt was highly valuable was its ability to give me a rating on a user story. So, how did it do that? How did it do that? But better, why do you think that's an important piece of functionality?
So that actually arose because I would coach teams, and they'd come up with a story that would say build a subscription payment panel, and I would literally coach them. Say, okay, what you really need to do to make it better, let's rewrite it. And so I would ask them questions to say, who's this for? Oh, it's for a tier 1 subscriber. Okay, write as a tier 1. And so I would literally help them reform that story into the proper form. And so I thought about that. I thought, well, why can't a technology do that for them in both a free-form text analyzer as well as a pick a box pre-selected offering? So, and I built a very simple algorithm that said you get credit for using the proper form, text tags of as a I want so that, and you get credit for using those forms. You get credit for reusing those other tags. In other words, if you've got roles, if you predefine roles and goals and benefits. In other words, if you take the time to think through what it is that you want in the form of the user story components, you can eventually build up a score. You can quantify your product and user story universe in such a way that gives you information. Again, this thing that's for you, is such that you can then say, what is the quality of my backlog? If I have a backlog of user stories that are simply poorly written, it's going to be a lower score than a backlog of higher, better written user stories. And you can use that information not only to inform a user story authoring process, but also to inform whether you're really ready to start sprinting, and hence the word Agile Ready. So we focused on less on the engineering side of agile management, which is, how's iteration running? What's the metrics of that? We think those tools do a great job there, We're focused on, let's get the right stories built first before you get them into some sprints that are working.
Why do you think people put the project management part of Agile ahead of things like user stories and later on the technical side? Why do they put that ahead of that?
The pressure to, quote, deliver. In other words, we've got budget, we're spending money. We've got these developers, sometimes contractors, burning money. They need to be doing something of value, which I agree with. They should, right? But having them spin through unclear requirements, or having them read, like you said, that document that you showed earlier of requirements, and having them try to interpret it with 7 different people having 7 different information contexts to understand that, is just a recipe for that cloud of uncertainty, right? So it's just like that telephone game where you have people sit in a circle, and on one side you start and you say, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. And then by the time it gets to the other side, the last person says, the plane landed in Spain. The story went completely sideways. And that's what happens if things aren't very clear and accessible as well, right? So you want to have the information to be public and available. And so one of the things with the Agile Ready tool is you have, multiple users have access to the same user story database, product database, backlog database. So everybody sees everything, so everybody can contribute and be part of the team.
Tony, how did you decide to make a product? And, I know it's software as a service, but still people had to write code. They had to configure servers. You had to do a whole lot of crazy stuff. And if I remember, I don't think I heard stories that you may have been in that market once upon a time. But as a rule, I think over the past 20 years, I don't think you have. So how did this all come about? And as an entrepreneur, why was this an interesting game to play?
So like I said, when I was coaching and helping teams write better user stories, it was like, man, I wish there was a tool out there. And the Agile project management tools are fine, but they never address the issue of how good is the story that you're scheduling for the sprint. And you have to go through a very heavy manual process. And then as the advent of AI and natural language processing came up, I've started to realize, oh, shoot, we could probably professionalize this process, have a little bit of technology to look at the actual form and format of user stories and the other components such as job stories and Gherkin stories. And we can say, okay, so then I came up with the idea, wrote a bunch of PowerPoints, went out and tried to get a bunch of money and failed miserably at getting money. And what that taught me was that because we failed miserably because they wanted to see something that was written of value. And it also pissed me off a little bit because I figured if I'm going to get money, I'm going to have to give up control. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to self-fund. And I'm going to see if I can do this as inexpensively as possible. I interviewed a firm first, local firm in Jacksonville, did not like them, decided not to go with them, then found a second firm in India that I really liked, did a pilot program with them. It turned out they did a good job for a good price. I gave them a bunch of written specifications and program. I didn't write, which included 80 user stories. So not only did they give them a PowerPoint deck that showed the vision, because there's context information that you need, but I also gave them about 80 user stories, which defined what the system was. Because I figured, hey, if I can't eat my own dog food, what's the point? And so in doing that, then they went ahead and built what was called the beta version. And we did some testing with that. Then when they delivered the final beta version, I had to become both a programmer, an enterprise architect, spin up AWS instances, because I'm a little bit of a control freak and I wanted to make sure I managed the quality process from beginning to end. So when this thing goes out, and if it's crap, I'm the only one that's going to be able to be blamed for it. But so I really enjoyed navigating the entire technology stack. It's true, I hadn't touched coding since I did some C++ coding in 1987. That was the last time I coded. But now I'm doing JavaScript, I'm doing Python, I'm doing SQL Server, and doing AWS network router lists. I mean, the whole 9 yards. Now, of course, it's been over 2.5 years. I took a lot of courses through Udemy and so forth, but I just like that kind of stuff. Not everybody can do that. So sometimes you have to specialize and sometimes you have to outsource, but not everybody can do that. I just happen to love the challenge of doing that and also maintaining control over the whole process. But at some point, I'm going to have to, if I'm going to grow the business, I'm going to have to delegate and outsource some key components while I go back to focus on product innovation, because we have plans for, again, a big machine language engine that will drive a lot of future functionality for this thing.
So how are you going to know when it's time to do that, to start to let other people under the hood?
It'll depend upon what kind of reception this product takes. If this product stays a hobby product, then I can deal with it in off hours without a big issue. It'll be fun. It'll be good. It'll be a good coaching hobby product. But if all of a sudden we start to get the type of user community, and I figure if I get 100 or so users to buy into this idea, that if they see value in this, again, as an entrepreneur, you got to take something, you got to put it to the marketplace and find out, were my assumptions correct? They could not be. This could fall flat on its face and just be a hobby coaching tool for my resume. But if it does work, and we think about 100 people are going to tax my ability to be able to manage it with a small operation, then I'm going to have to begin to first outsource the production support, and make sure that'll be the hardest that'll be the easiest to me to delegate. In other words, hey, I don't want to worry about if the server goes down. You got to do the backups of the database and all of the different load balancers and all that enterprise architect stuff. So that'll be the first one I can give away. And then after that, giving away sales, and then you start to then have I can focus on product innovation and the code.
What's driving you? I had a long conversation with a gentleman who's the CEO of Agility. It's up on the podcast this week, Recall. And he argued that this whole entrepreneur thing is really a wonderful thing, but only if you have an absolute passion about the idea, right? And the willingness to bet it all. Because he says, he's a serial entrepreneur and he's bet it all a number of times. He said, you have to be willing to go down to the bank and sign your mortgage over when something goes wrong, because it will. How did you know that you could do that? Because you've committed yourself to this path.
So I committed myself to this path, but not necessarily from a financial risk perspective. Because I was able to wear many, many different hats, the cost of doing this was significantly reduced. So I was able to fund it through a discretionary funds, and basically it was basically and over time, right? So I had no time pressure to actually make a particular commitment because I didn't know anything. And so I was able to do it over time and take my time with it, but at the same time, make progress. Now, that being said, there are a couple of times I wanted to give up because it was like, I got bored with it. I'm an idea guy. I had a great idea, but implement it, what the heck. But then halfway through, I figured, I'm going to implement this the whole way, because worst case, I'll exit having learned a bunch of stuff that might make me more marketable in the marketplace. So there was these little considerations of, there's going to be some benefit to this process, even if it's not, I sell it for $55 million in 6 years or something like that. Now, that being said, I disagree slightly with your gentleman that you mentioned. I think entrepreneurship is overrated. This passion idea, I think it's overrated. I think embedding it all is a little bit of the mythology. Most entrepreneurs fail. Out of 3,000, and this is a guy just made up out of my mind, but it's more intuitive. For every great entrepreneur story of success you hear, you don't hear about the 3,000 others that failed and gave up halfway through. Now, I agree with them that those that fail gave up at some point, but you have to define what is success for you, right? If success for you is divorced from the financial incentive and it has more meaning to you when it comes to either knowledge advancement, sense of accomplishment, and others, you can be a very successful entrepreneur as opposed to one that the only cachet that some people say is, well, if you're not making a ton of money, you're not a successful entrepreneur. And to that, I say baloney. You can be a successful entrepreneur in any endeavor as long as you've defined success that works for you.
Tony, tomorrow morning you wake up, somebody walks in, hands you a magic wand, cup of coffee. We won't get into why people are handing you magic wands in the morning, and gave you two wishes, and two wishes to, you were able to affect how teams can deliver value. And so change any two things that affect those teams. What would those two things be and why?
Okay, so first it would be professionalize the front end requirements to use the story pipeline. And two, have all product owners come from the business.
Okay, I can understand the second one. All product owners should be the business, or at least proxies, and probably from the technology. I'm kidding on that one. Obviously, no proxies. But what do you mean by professionalizing the front end?
Well, that's okay. So I'm being a little clever there. Professionalize the front end requirements to use a story pipeline, which is basically what Agile Ready does. Agile Ready intent is to professionalize that front end where you're talking about user stories and you're curating them, you're organizing them, you're listing them, you're rating them, you're rating backlogs, you're rating products, you're connecting them to features and capabilities. And where the future of the product is going to go is to go into how those user stories and products fit into product roadmaps, such that the artificial intelligence future of Agile Ready means not only that you can create, let's say, a first product set and you use Agile Ready for, let's say, producing a particular product, then with our envisioned future machine language learning engine, you should be able then to essentially copy that product and then paste it, in a sense, to another product that may be similar or a sibling of it, and then be able to then edit that in a way in which it gives you an ability to come up with a series of what we call proto backlogs and proto user stories that can accelerate the process of getting your teams ready to sprint. So there's a whole lot of things that we've got in the innovation hamper that we just need to get to at some point. But we needed to get this first MVP version out that is good enough, we think, to at least get good feedback from the marketplace, hopefully get some users, and start the process downstream.
So the innovation hamper, that's before it gets into the innovation pipeline?
Yes.
Innovation hamper. Tony, this is absolutely marvelous. I always have a great time talking with you. Tony, as you know, at the end here, I open up the platform for people to promote anything they like. The podcast is, by the time this runs, we're at the beginning, somewhere in the first couple of episodes of year 15. So it has been around for a long time. Tony, the platform, a couple of minutes, you can promote anything you like. The reason I brought up the 14, 15 years, obviously, is to feel good about that myself, but also to let you know that selling your car on eBay, not the use of this.
Right. So very simple. The beagileready.com. It sounds just like it. beagileready.com. Just visit that whenever you get a chance. Give it the 30-day trial a shot. Let me know what you think. Send me an email to talk about it at tony.timbol, tony.timbol at agileready.net. And really, that's all. Let this product stand for itself. Would love some feedback. We're always looking for ideas. No one team or no one company is going to be able to come up with all the good ideas for a product. So we're looking forward to hitting the marketplace and hopefully get some feedback.
When's it going to hit the marketplace?
We will launch on 1/29, if not sooner. It's going to be sort of a rolling launch as we're finishing up our final enhancements and product fixes, and we just got to get up the production servers up and running. The open beta has been running for a while, and so basically that's our goal, is 1/29. So hopefully by the time this podcast hits, it'll be up and running, and then we'll see it from there.
one final question, something I wanted to ask along the way and wanted to put it here near the end where I could actually edit it out if I didn't like the answer. So you sent over all of this documentation, and how many user stories?
About 80.
Did you run those 80 user stories through Agile Ready now?
I did.
And?
They're pretty good because I used them to test. And so they all got high ratings because I wrote them all to the form.
I thought perhaps you were going to say they all got high ratings because I wrote them. No.
But the thing is, it helped me create an actual default data set. So when Agile Ready comes up for you, it comes up with a blank canvas for you. And I'll have this all in the help files and all that. It comes up with a blank canvas, but you can immediately reset and load default data. So all of a sudden you will have, in essence, a complete product backlog of the My Zap car. It's an electric car project that will that has a bunch of backlogs about what the software updates we're going to do for an electric car to find charging stations, to find roadside assistance, and to operate your drone that gets launched from the back of your electric car that follows you. So this product backlog, it gives you an illustration of how the product can work. And obviously you can erase all of that when you're done and start writing your own. But that those stories that I wrote initially that I rated, then I actually wrote this set of default data that the product has. So looking forward to seeing what people think of that, of the electric car, the Zap car, with a head nod to Elon Musk.
Tony Timbol of Agile Ready, thank you very much for spending time and living through at least one technical failure as we did this interview. Thank you again for spending time and really providing some extraordinary value to the Software Process and Measurement Cast listeners.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
The Software Process and Measurement Cast is a proud media sponsor of the DevOps Online Summit. Not to put too fine a point on it, one of the best ways to get your message heard is to speak. The crew at the DevOps Online Summit provides a phenomenal platform to network with fellow practitioners from all over the world. Start your journey to speaking at the DevOps Online Summit by submitting your idea. Link in the show notes. I hope to hear you there. In Reread Saturday News, today we take on Chapter 73. What, Tom? We were in Chapter 7 last week. We've jumped over a number of techniques in the book, which I think are extremely valuable, but to focus on Chapter 73, the culmination of putting the whole Agile performance hierarchy together. The other chapters that we jumped over are techniques for use within Agile, like doing your daily scrum, your daily stand-up, those sorts of things. I've used them a lot. I've used those chapters to help people understand those techniques. Highly recommend you read them. Highly recommend you buy a copy of the book. But the reread has focused predominantly on the Agile performance hierarchy. In 2 weeks, we will begin Fixing Your Scrum, Practical Solutions to Common Scrum Problems. Buy a copy and read along. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast, we're going back to the magazine format for a week. We'll feature our essay titled Collaboration Disconnected. The improvement imperative is driven by the need to stay competitive at a holistic level. One would expect that continuous process improvement or continuous improvement would be discussed earnestly at every staff meeting, at every level of the organization, and at every meeting. It isn't. Disconnected. We'll also have a visit from John M. Quigley to talk quality from a product development point of view. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?